So with your pivot after pivot after pivot, the pattern that I'm seeing is you are very serious as an organization about thinking about the business of charity and operating like a true, I don't want to say a true for-profit company would, but just like a professional outfit.
Absolutely, it has to be, yeah. And I think gone are the days where not that wasn't happening before, but that can't happen in today's environment. We deal with the same thing that any business, concentration risk. When you think of your donor base, we've seen a change. We used to, we're in our 90th year, and being here that long, you build up a base of support. But we made the shift probably 6 or 7 years ago. We were primarily civic progress, more heavily corporately funded. And as the landscape was changing, over the last decade here in St. Louis, companies were getting bought out, companies were merging, companies' headquarters were moving out of St. Louis, and so it might be regional headquarters is left here. There was some risk, and if we didn't develop the individual and the foundation support that we could get, that was really some institutional risk to the organization. So we had to make an effort probably 7 years ago to say we really need to build up this side of instead of just the corporations, we need to build up the individual and foundation giving because we had some concentration risk. And thankfully we did, because we've had a lot of change, just over those 7 years. And we've completely flipped, where if the individuals and the foundations have replaced the money, the level of giving, and surpass the level of giving that we get from corporates, just because the landscape has changed. We still have some unbelievable corporate partners who have been with us for decades, but we have fewer of them because they've gone away.
So here at Storyboard, for example, we don't do any third-party property management, but if we were to do third-party property management, we probably wouldn't want to bring on an owner client that has, let's say, 90% of our total portfolio that we're managing.
Right.
Because the risk would be they may switch companies or they may sell. So if I understand correctly on your end, the risk with a big corporate donor is if 1 year they decide they're no longer going to donate as much or at all, you can't fund your programs. But would you turn someone down would you turn a large corporation down if tomorrow they say they'll write you a check that's equal to all of your current year's donations or something?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely not. I think the decision would be, or how we would evaluate that. One, we wouldn't turn them down because, in our world, we have wait lists for, there is more demand for our services than we are able to fund. So we have wait lists for medical equipment, or wait lists for people who need therapy services that they can't afford, or we have wait lists for, we can only have so many people come to camp, and so we need to serve those folks. I think the calculation would be, when I look at our programs, a couple of our programs, the equipment and the therapy program, those are ones that we're able to ramp up faster and more quickly than the others because of the infrastructure that's required internally, the staff that's required. You're adding caseloads on staff, but you can, with adding one new staff person, you can add 30 or 40 new kids that they serve. So if we were to get a gift like that, the evaluation, I think, would be, well, what's the internal investment that we need to provide services at this level? So if we got that gift, it might be adding just a couple of people internally to serve more kids, where if we were to ramp up and use that money to support our camp or performing arts, that's a little bit more labor intensive internally with staff that we would need to do that, and that takes more time. And so an investment there, you're committing more dollars. So if we were to grow the camp and add more weeks of camp or more venues that we provide the camp at, that's an investment you're committing those dollars. And so that would be harder to commit those dollars there if they were less certain that they were going to come back. So that's probably the way we would approach that, or have to look at that.
And is there any scenario where if you were to beat your revenue projections or
Right.
targets, so the number of donations coming in, is there any scenario where maybe you look to park those funds somewhere to fund future year activities?
Yeah, and we as an organization, to kind of smooth out the rough years and the cyclical nature of some things, we made, and this predated me. So if I've been there 13 years, this was probably a few years before that. We decided to form an endowment and to have an endowment that we could build up over the course of time, that we can take distributions from each year to supplement, the variations in giving. So at least at Variety, what we decided to do to start funding that was any bequests that we got. But so if people would leave and were kind enough to leave money to us in their will or their estate, we used those gifts, not operationally for that year, but to build up an endowment. And so now we've built up an endowment that we can take a distribution. We have a certain percentage that we can only take up to, but as a course of a practice, we'll take a distribution each year from the endowments that we have to help supplement those fluctuations. And so that gave us a stability, from if you looking at the balance sheet and having assets that we can count on. If just like in every business, you look at cash flows and how many days of when we look at the number of days that we could function if everything were to be turned off, at any one point in time. So we try and keep, to want to have at least 6 months in cash at any point in time. So if another pandemic comes and everything turns off or something catastrophic happens, that we're able to continue to serve the families.
Doing good for society seems like it's a lot more complicated than an outsider may think.
Right. Yeah, and the paradox sometimes is, man, I'd love to not even have to be in business or not have to exist. It would be fantastic if parents could get the resources they need for their kids and there wasn't a need for a private charity to do that. So could you ever work yourself out of a job? That would be the happiest day of my life if I could say, we're done. We don't need to be around anymore. I'll move on to something else. But